creativity, productivity, and happiness. Where are you at, James? Come on up.
Working okay? Hey everybody, how are you? Good. So my name's James. I am a passionate lover of this thing we have between our ears. It's something that I think we mostly ignore. We notice it when it gets in the way, right? Like it gives us anxiety or problems, right? But we really don't know how to manage this asset. How many of you, by a show of hands, would like to have better ideas? Okay. How many of you would like to get more done in the day? All right, good. What about if you could get more done, have better ideas, and also spend less time working? How does that sound? So I want to start out with a story. Anybody know a guy by the name of Jeff Weiner? Anybody ever heard that name? So Jeff Weiner is the CEO of a very successful company you've probably heard of. It's called LinkedIn. And I read this story about Jeff Weiner, one of the busiest guys in Silicon Valley, right? Tons of demands on his time. And he has this ritual he does every day. And when I read it, I was like, really? So he takes 2 hours of his day, chunks it out into 30-minute blocks, okay, spread out throughout his day, and tells his assistant, nothing. Don't schedule a single thing. This is my alone time. This is my time to be with my thoughts, to take a nap, right? To go on a walk, to sit there with a notebook and see if any ideas pop into my head. 25% of his day he's not working. And he's running one of the most successful companies in Silicon Valley. I got to thinking, this is crazy. This is insane because we get this message again and again and again that the only route to success is to work harder. Anybody ever heard that message in their life? Right? It's like a treadmill, right? And if you just keep going hard enough at it again and again and again, eventually you'll have these, this payoff. Well, the brain science says something quite a bit different. The brain science, what psychologists have discovered is that Jeff Weiner, this insight he had about managing his time in this way was completely genius. So your brain operates in essentially 2 different modes of thinking. The first mode, okay, is what we usually stay in, which is a stay on task mode. It's where you're writing that email and you can kind of feel, it feels like mental effort. You know that feeling, mental effort? It's hard. Or you're coming up with content for your talk and you're thinking and it kind of hurts a little bit, right? And eventually if you do it long enough, sometimes you get a headache, right in your forehead, right? So this is stay on task mode. And this is the mode that most of us spend most of our day in. What psychologists have discovered is there's something else called mind-wandering mode. Okay? Mind-wandering mode is what you were told as a child was a waste of time. Stop daydreaming. Get back to work. Pay attention. What are you doing looking out the window? Right? Anybody ever heard those messages? You're wasting my time. You're wasting your time. No, not if you're interested in being a creative person, generating original ideas. Not only is it not a waste of time, it's fundamentally how the brain is created. So you have stay on task mode, okay? You're doing something, you're working on some project for, let's call it 90 minutes. And then you switch modes into mind-wandering mode by getting up and going for a walk. Or taking a drive. Or taking a nap, or meditating, or doing yoga, or anything that is mentally easy for you. And you'll notice, just by by show of hands, anybody have, so let me get just a few responses. When do you guys have your best ideas? Shower? What else? Running? First thing in the morning?
Yeah. When I first wake up.
First wake up? Late at night? Driving? Meditating? How about staring at your computer screen? No! Right? Me neither. But we're told that's how to get stuff done. We just keep staring at it and somehow magic, like you'll be struck by insight, right? But it's not how it happens. So if we can switch from staying in this focus state, okay? Psychologists sometimes call it executive mode. And go between these modes throughout our day, executive mode, creative mode, stay on task mode, mind-wandering mode. That is the equation that creative people have used for thousands of years to get their best work done. There's this other story, Leonardo da Vinci, who is painting The Last Supper. And he's been hired to do this, and his boss is telling him, you're not working fast enough. You do these weird things, like you just take off in the middle of the day, and 3 hours later, I don't know where you've been. You're wasting so much time. And he comes back to him and he says, but he has this quote about geniuses getting their best work done while they're not working. And so we've tapped into this over time. Collectively, we've sort of stumbled upon this. But until now, we've never actually understood what's happening in the brain. Your brain goes into this mind-wandering mode, this what psychologists call default network. And that's when your brain is doing two things. One, it's trying to make sense of what you just did the previous 90 minutes. So it's consolidating. It's taking all the chaos that you poured into it, looking at email or Facebook or whoever knows, right? Whatever we're doing in the previous 90 minutes. And it's wandering around your mind, trying to put ideas together to create coherence, to create organization, to actually make sense of things. So we've all got all sorts of ideas bouncing around in our head. We're putting content in it, reading stuff and watching stuff. Every once in a while, it puts together two unusual ideas, and that combination, as it's wandering, is brilliant. It's insight. And it seems to come from nowhere. But it's not coming from nowhere. It's coming from this default mind-wandering state that your brain will go into if you give it time to go into it. So there's this idea that I've sort of come up with that seems to be about the ideal equation. So going between these two modes, I think, is the ideal way to do this. But spending 90 minutes in this mode and about 30 minutes in this mode, you'll start noticing that suddenly you start having your best ideas when you're doing nothing, when you're laying on the grass, and you're not trying to do anything. Your mind is always on. It doesn't go to sleep or rest. It's fundamentally creative. Fundamentally, we all have this creative capacity, but what we've done is systematically shut the window on that creativity. Anybody like an example, sort of a download of what this looks like a PDF of this? Cool. So I've created, if you can pull this up, pull out your phones. I just did this. Is it up? Okay, so text the word brain, BRAIN, to 66866. And this will give you an email back that will say, send your email, and then we'll send you this explanation of how this works. The second thing, as you're doing that it does, is that your brain is fundamentally like a battery. Just like the battery on your cell phone, your brain loses its charge throughout the day. Anybody notice the 3 p.m. slump? What do you, give me some things that happen usually at 3 p.m. nap, sleep, get tired. Anything else? More coffee. We mask it by throwing caffeine into our body. Good. What else? Hungry. You get irritable. Yeah. No, you're not alone. We get it. We get like, it pisses off more, right? Good. Yeah, and oftentimes what we end up doing is we start distracting ourselves with mindless activities, social media being a big one, right? So instead of doing something that's actually restoring your brain, that battery, that mental battery, what we do is we drain it even more by surfing Facebook. Because things like social media actually continue to drain that battery. What your brain is doing is it's craving distraction. And it will take distraction whether you get up from your seat and go for a walk and actually choose to restore it intentionally, or whether you just sit there and try to push through it with caffeine or whatever. It's going to keep pushing toward a break because it needs one after 90 minutes. So it will take one whether or not you give it a break. It's a question of whether or not you want that break to restore your energy and creative capacity, or whether or not you want to drain it even further and get more irritable. Right? So the kinds of activities, and I mentioned a few, that actually restore. Social media, these kinds of things, they do not restore. You have to make decisions, you have social comparison. All of this takes mental work and mental energy, and it elevates our levels of stress. Going for a walk is one of the most powerful ways to take a break, especially if it's a green space. Okay? So get up from the computer and walk away. Just walk away. Just walk away. It almost doesn't matter where you go. The second thing is, if you can do this, do some stretching or yoga or meditation. Any of those. Meditation specifically has been shown to recharge your mental battery. Calling a friend, any kind of social interaction will boost your oxytocin levels, and boom, you'll have a whole new biochemistry pulsing in your brain after a conversation. Not about work, but about something unrelated to work. Okay? Doing a hobby, right? If you knit or if you do anything, right, that just kind of takes your mind. Or somebody was telling me that they play the guitar and how restorative that was in their breaks, right? Anything that switches your mind into something you're good at or something you enjoy will literally recharge your brain and recharge those creative batteries. Okay, so I have applied this in my own life. I don't consider myself a naturally creative person, although I don't like that word natural. But I've been doing this for the last 2 years, and I've been blown away by the ideas I've had. Not because I'm not this I don't think of myself as this creative person bursting with ideas. But as I give myself this time, I've just been shocked at how much more interesting and innovative the ideas I have are. Okay? So with that, I know you guys probably have questions. I just want to open it up before, how much time do we have, Ever?
4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. So questions about this concept. Yes, please.
So I come up with ideas. I have a file folder in Evernote of all those brilliant ideas. I am not the best at the sit down, keep that energy going to create that content. Is there a tip or trick that you have for getting into flow of that workflow? Sorry if that's off topic.
No, it's not off topic at all. In fact, so she brings up the concept of flow, which is the other thing that's really well researched. How do you tap into that state of heightened productivity, of intense focus? This 90-30 principle that I talk about, I actually think of it as the power of pause and the power of flow, that they feed off of each other in an upward spiral. The more pause you take, the more regulated those pauses are, the easier it is to tap into states of flow, which require intense concentration. And if you don't have the mental energy from that previous break, you don't have literally enough juice in your brain to focus hard enough or intense enough to create a flow state. I would say that would be the first place to start. Is just like try it, like a ritual almost, right? Or a timer to go back and forth and see if getting into flow, because it's hard to actually organize all those good ideas, helps with the motivational pain of what you'll feel like is resistance to that hard part of organizing. So that'd be a first place to start, but let's talk some more. Other questions? Any other questions? Okay. All right. So if anybody has any other questions, I'm happy to talk more. This is fascinating stuff. You all have deep creative potential sitting inside your brain right now. It's just a matter of unleashing that. Yeah, please.
What do you say to people who say, I'm not creative?
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm a brick and mortar, nuts and bolts. What can I do to be more creative?
So the best research on this is Carol Dweck, if any of you have heard of her, mindset, a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. This is an example of having a fixed mindset about creativity. I'm not a creative person. I don't believe that creativity is something you can grow and change with effort. Versus a growth mindset about creativity is this idea that, look, it just takes practice. It's just what Cherie said. Can anybody be a public speaker? Yeah. But it takes practice, effort, right? Time in. It's the exact same thing with creativity. Creativity is just a skill. All brains are naturally creative. One of the most prominent creativity researchers right now, Scott Barry Kaufman at the University of Pennsylvania, wrote a book called Wired to Create. Okay? And his fundamental thesis is all of us are just naturally creative. It's just that we don't know how to tap into that because of how we've been conditioned to work and live our lives. We actually don't leave enough time and space to open up that creative part of our brain.
You were talking there about the 90-30 breakup.
Yeah.
I was wondering, what about if you've got the other problem, where you want to spend 90 minutes walking and 30 minutes working?
Sure. So the 90... Yeah, I get it. This is a very pragmatic thing. You just got to find what works for you. The 90-30 is sort of a nice starting place if you want to try 90-15 or you want to try 60-10. What matters is that you're taking breaks, right? The amounts of time you're going to kind of feel out and test out and really zero in on what works best for you. And if it works for you, I say do it. Okay. Oh, yeah, please.
I've personally played around a lot with this and done
Cool.
like 30-15 or 35 or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and it works. There's a tap called the Pomodoro method. There's several. You can set it and then just find what works for you. And for me, I have to change it based on where the task is going, so nothing set works forever.
Because some tasks are more difficult than others and they need more of a break, perhaps. Okay. Yes, last one.
I'm actually creative, so I don't get assigned this.
Good.
But I find that I have to do the extra opposite of what you're saying. Is turn off and do something analytical
Interesting.
as kind of a balance with creative.
Good. So it does require both, right? It's not just about taking breaks, and so this is both of your points. And Scott Barry Kaufman would argue that what you need to do is go between these states throughout your day. Because if you're not putting content in and really doing that hard thinking, your brain doesn't have anything to play around with, right? And make sense of it and have those ideas. What it's having those ideas from is the hard work you were doing putting new information inside.
Actually, it's more doing the analytical stuff, doing the part of the rest.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Kind of just let the ideas kind of swirl around.
Cool. Cool. Wow, this is awesome. I love this. You're like an outlier. Most of us are in this bell curve, and you're over here. You have the opposite. I love it. It's wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Just a quick update. We are going to